Hey Julia,
Hey Richard.
I've come down to your neck of the woods.
You have?
Yes.
Your childhood.
Your childhood.
Latter childhood.
Exactly. We've come down to have a look at a windmill, but not any ordinary kind of windmill. What windmill are we looking at?
We're looking at Bursledon Windmill.
Bursledon Windmill, which is near Fareham,
Yes.
in Hampshire. Nearly said West Sussex then, just off the A27, close to Southampton, I guess.
Yes, closer to Southampton than Portsmouth.
We're here to see Gary Freeman, who's going to take us around the windmill, or one of his volunteers, I can't remember which. Very excited. Now you may notice that the sweeps, as we say in Sussex, but sails, I guess here,
Everywhere else. Yeah.
have, if I do that,
Uh-oh.
So
As
it looks,
Joseph would say.
yeah, looks a bit like a Dalek. So they came off in 2000.
And 15, I think. Is
Yeah, because of
Just told me 5 minutes ago.
yeah, we just been told.
Less than.
We'll find out more about it. I think Gary and Jane are inside the windmill.
Yeah.
So should we go in and have a look?
Yes. We've got
This
lots
is
of questions for
fantastic.
them.
Look down there, on the lead up to the windmill, the original stones that apparently had fallen through when the windmill had been abandoned.
Yeah.
Fantastic bit of history right before we start. So let's go in and meet our hosts.
Let's.
So, Gary. Hello, Gary.
Hiya.
I'm going to do left-handed shake-handing. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
This is not your windmill per se, but pretty much, because you've grown up with this windmill since you were a little boy.
Yeah, so nipper to miller now.
So you are the miller.
I am.
It's not often you get a chance to meet a miller in the flesh,
No,
because there's not many of you
There
around.
isn't.
You know, not a traditional miller
no.
with a proper windmill. So this is the Bursledon Windmill,
It is.
established and built in
1813.
1813. And you were telling us before we started filming that it only ran for about 50 years.
It did.
That's almost a crime, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately roller mills came in, had electric on the button, so.
That's, yeah. And roller mills, you being near Southampton, you were very close to the roller mills that were coming in. So I guess people, because it was closer, this would have been one of the first mills to have been abandoned, whereas if you were inland it's a bit further away to get the new-fangled milling done.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there would have been a mill per village with a windmill or water mill, and unfortunately loads went out of use.
But it's still here, that's the main
Yeah, we're
thing.
still here.
That's what we're very excited. And this is your colleague over here, Jane. Hello, Jane.
Hello, nice to meet
you. And you're a volunteer,
I am, yes.
so you take people round and show them and answer all the questions.
Try to, yes. Or defer to Gary so he can answer, yeah.
Absolutely. And you guys are going to sort of tag along so we can ask you questions as we go.
Yeah?
Well, that's very exciting, isn't it, Julia?
Yes, it is. It is. I've already spotted something interesting.
And that's a traditional garb that a miller. I mean, it's hard to imagine now those old-fashioned clothes, isn't it? That
It is.
millers would have worn. I mean, you see it, but and I guess that's to keep all the
Yeah, dusty miller.
dusty
so it's
miller.
easy off
So
and in
yeah,
the wash.
you're going to be
Or on the
completely
old
covered.
thing, as it would have been in the olden days, wouldn't it?
Fantastic. What room are we in now? This is right at the bottom in the roundhouse.
Yeah,
or
so-
I guess, does it have a roundhouse
It
in a
doesn't.
tower mill?
So this is the ground floor of the windmill. We're a 4-storey mill, this one.
4 stories.
Yeah.
This is just the ground floor.
It
So
is.
post mills are the ones that would have had a roundhouse as
Yeah.
such because they're built around the trestle.
That's it.
Ah, that makes sense.
Do I recall that this wasn't originally a tower mill?
So there was one here before this one.
Well, one here before this one. So
So-
this one was already. Yeah. Okay.
There's a post mill, and that was in the garden, which we'll see as we go up.
Ah.
There's nothing of it today, unfortunately. There's sometimes on dry days you see the roundness in the ground.
I see.
Oh, do you?
You do.
The little patch where it was.
Oh, you might see it actually when you
All
pick
right.
up, maybe, if you're lucky.
Well, we'll have a look for that. So, how do we get up to the next floor?
So we got stairs now, which used to be a ladder. 4 of them to the top they used to be, and yeah, so now we got stairs.
Let's head up the stairs. Here, we can only go up into 2 of the floors, but that's okay because you get a really good idea of the mechanics. All wooden teeth and everything. And as Gary just said, every windmill is going to be unique. They're not churned out by a factory. But even here, you just get a little view of all the technical, mechanical stuff.
But it's
really amazing because it looks very technical, but actually the principle is so basic. Oh, here we are. Now I'm guessing that this is the where the stones are. 3 sets of stones and one on display for us.
Yep.
Fantastic, look at this.
Like you say, every part of a windmill is unique because it's bespoke, because it has to be made for that windmill. Just look at it. Like the grooves and everything to catch and grind. Fantastic. Well, yeah, because that would get put on top, wouldn't it?
oh yeah.
So that's absolutely fascinating. Gary was just saying that the stones are formed in pieces, and of course when you think about it, it makes sense that, as Jane just said, out in the wild, in places like this one's from France and the other one was from Derbyshire,
That's right.
where the stone is the right form of stone to grind the corn. They don't come in great big round circular chunks all ready to go in a windmill. They've got to be formed and put together. So they are cut and formed into this circle shape. Thank you, Julia. And it's just amazing. So the grain comes down, and as they turn, as I remember understanding, the sort of centrifugal force sends them out to the side, and then out of the grooves they'll,
It's the middle.
once they've been floured to the degree that they need to be, they come out and then drop down below.
Gary's just shown me this little gadget that shows and demonstrates how the grinding with the grooves and everything work, well, how the whole thing works together. So as it goes, it grinds it down towards the end, and all the powder gets shifted out to the edges because of the nature of the grooves. So that's fascinating.
Just before we move away from the stones, there's more to everything. And we've just been chatting, and I've just had to say to Gary, look, you've got to tell us this again. Firstly, I didn't appreciate that stones needed sharpening. I assumed, and I imagine most people would assume the same, is you've got the stones and eventually they wear out and you get new stones. But like anything else, knives and things, scissors and what have you, things can be sharpened. I didn't realise that. So you can sharpen the stones.
Yep.
How would a miller have done that then?
So around 100 tonne of grain that goes through there, we lift them apart as we have them today and sharpen them with this tool. It is called a mill bill.
It's quite easy to see why it's called a mill bill, isn't it?
A mill bill, right, okay. So that's a lump of wood with a great great chunk of metal that looks like a sharp. How do you sharpen these stones? Because this is hard stone, isn't it?
It is. I would show you, but it sparks as
No.
one of my volunteers found out, and I better not do that.
So basically you're gouging out the tracks in the stone here.
Yep.
That's
So we
basically
literally
it?
hit the pattern back in.
Right. And that sharpens it up. And I mean, it must take years to do that, to learn how to do that.
Oh yes, I haven't done it myself to be honest, but
And
I guess it's...
how long would it take you to sharpen a whole millstone?
So both together with sharpen takes around a month in around 12 of these parts. So the local blacksmith, which was down the road, was very happy.
Yeah,
to
I
see
bet
all
it
that.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
that's amazing.
So while one wheel was out of action, the one set of stones, a month. So you'd have 3 here. Well,
You've
had
got 3
here.
yeah.
So that was, you could still keep going with 2 others. So that's a good thing. But what did you call these bigger grooves?
So they're called the thorrows.
Thorougghs.
Yep.
And
A bit like ploughing then.
It is.
Yeah.
And the little ones are called the stitching. And the
Which would have
flats
required a finer instrument than the
are just
the mill.
precise.
Oh, just more precisely.
Yeah.
It would have been done. Oh, wow,
With the
they're
whole
quite
tool.
fine, aren't
It's
they?
They
it's
are.
incredible what goes on. Now, you told us a fascinating story about if you were changing your job, if you were like the miller's hand or somebody who's worked here. Tell us that story again.
So health and safety, was 0 in the olden days. So maybe a hat if you're lucky. So when you dress the stone, we wear the stone along with the tool.
What do you mean by you wear the stone?
So sparks will be flying off from the stones when we're sharpening it, along with here, the metal part.
Oh yeah. So you'd basically get small fragments and powder
Embedded in you,
in
yes.
you, and like, yeah, you'd be living it really, wouldn't you?
So how does that help you then when you want to go for a job?
Not for health, but if you went to another mill and asked for a job, you'd be asked to show you metal. So the more shine you had to you with the tool and the stone, the better.
So the more shine you had on your skin and
so
your clothing.
all scarred up.
Ah, gotcha.
Just looking at the incredible main shaft. So you've got the sweeps, as we say in Sussex, or the sails, which turn the drive shaft, which then turn this beast, which is the sort of powerhouse that turns everything else. And Gary said it was, I assumed it would be a piece of oak, but I gather it's spruce, which is a bit unusual. Jane, tell us a little bit about that. You're saying that, I think you said this had to be here first before anything else could happen.
That's what we think, because we can't see a way that people could actually have built the mill and then got this in afterwards. So we think this was probably positioned first,
Right.
in 1813, and then the mill was built around it.
And did Gary say that it was an old mast from a ship?
Yes, because it has landmarks on it, I believe they're called. And we're obviously in the shipbuilding area.
Yes.
Ships have been built here for many years, so we think it was probably from that, and it was probably sailed down the Hamble on a barge and erected here.
The sound of the bell, I guess that's something that immediately pricks in the miller's ears, because now we've been around water mills and various different windmills, and that's the one thing that I've come
It's
away
always
remembering.
always the same with the bells. You know, the bells are so important because they save lives, don't they?
Don't they?
Yeah.
And it's about when the grain is running out in the hopper, as the hopper comes down, it's saying, I've got no grain in there.
Yep.
And before it hits the stone. And if that's allowed to happen, it means the stone
They'll
is...
grind together, make sparks, and set the whole thing alight.
And of course they're wearing the stone down, presumably, because there's nothing going through it.
Mm.
So if the miller hears that, he's got to make sure him or his
Post
nipper,
haste.
yeah, is up there making sure the hopper's above. Now Gary just said that once he ignored the sound of the bell.
I did, so I remember that smell and I remember that slap. So I'll never do that again.
Never do it again. Yeah, learning the hard way.
Yeah,
But
can't teach that now.
No, absolutely. Just going to step outside onto, I don't know what you call this.
What would you call?
What do you call this? Is this
I call this a reefing stage.
a reefing stage? I was going to call it the veranda, but reefing
The
stage.
balcony.
Yes, sounds a lot more technical, doesn't it? And we can walk completely around.
We can.
What is reefing then?
So reefing the sails. So
Oh,
normally-
reefing the sails, of
Yeah.
course.
And not only reefing, we've got to move the mill into the wind. The sails there behind your van at the moment, and reefing the sails is climbing them from this very stage and pulling out relevant canvas depending on the wind speed. So the more the wind, the less the sail, and vice versa.
And so you need this stage to get
Access to them.
to the wind, unlike a post mill where they almost hit the ground.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the great things about windmills is the sails are not fixed in any one direction because obviously the wind changes.
Yep.
So on a post mill, you move if I've got that right, you move the sails around by using, I forget what it's called, you've got the fantail on, no wait a minute, the fantail's up there, but you've got the bit that comes out and you move it from the ground.
Yep.
But on a post mill, on a tower mill,
Tower mill.
so you see how easy it is to get confused on all of this. On a tower mill, because your sails are much higher, you can't do that from the ground. So how do you shift them round into the wind?
So we have this endless chain gear, and by pulling this, we can move 11 tons when the sails are back on there.
11 tons.
Yeah, a cap and sail.
Good God.
We can turn it from north to south to south, that is, in around 15 minutes.
The grounds, Julia, the grounds of the windmill are beautifully laid out. We've got a pond just in front of us, and
As
then
every windmill, every windmill needed a mill pond.
yeah, not to
Put out the fire.
yeah,
So
I was
lovely.
going to say not just to sort of sit there and enjoy and relax, but actually to have water in case there's a fire, which of course windmills could have been prone to because of the dust. But behind us is a granary,
Yes.
which was a place to store your grains.
Sitting on saddle stones. Which
Beautiful
is key
saddle.
to keep the rodents out.
Yes. So now this has got an interesting story. You've been doing some investigative
Yes,
work.
the lovely Jane told me some details about the other buildings here on site. And this one, obviously, Hiltingbury Granary. It was found when they were building Hiltingbury Primary School, I think she said.
Oh right. Oh, okay.
So, and of course, they wanted to preserve it and move it somewhere else where it could be used. And here it is.
And here it
I
is.
thought this would be the perfect spot, and I agree.
So it illustrates the storing of the grain by a windmill from a local primary school.
So there would have been a granary here, but it wasn't this one.
No. Bit like the barn, which we will go and have a look at now.
Yeah.
We stepped inside this beautiful old barn,
400-year-old barn.
400-year-old barn, a threshing barn that was in the same place as an original barn that's no longer here.
That's right. The original barn that was here, that cap that's on the windmill at the moment, was built in here.
Oh, see, was
But-
it?
Yes. Not this barn, the original barn. But the barn, once the cap was finished and ready to go up, the barn, they couldn't fit it out. They couldn't get it out, so they had
Oh,
to
it was
destroy
too
the
big.
barn, which was just decayed and quite badly rotten or something like that. Anyway, so and then this barn was brought over from Chilham near Basingstoke. You know how they do; they'll take it apart bit by bit, numbering all the pieces and put it all back
then
together.
rebuilding it.
Yeah, yes.
Fantastic.
So,
It's a wonderful old barn, isn't it?
It's
And
gorgeous.
it's lovely to see it. So the original barn, like this barn, was a threshing barn. So the farmers would come along with their corn
Yep.
on the stalks, and it would be threshed on site. I didn't realise that. I wonder how often that happened, because I assumed that they had to be. I thought the farmers would have threshed them in the fields, but there was a steam engine
Yes.
that worked here as well at one point in the, I guess, the Victorian era when steam engines were around. So they would have done the threshing in the barn, separating the stalks from the grain, and the grain could go just the yards over there, winched up or lifted up, and then milled into flour. I mean, an operation that did everything all in one go. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Not a problem, Tom. Not a problem at all.
Gary, your sales, you need funding, don't you? Because it's not, you can't just shove them up, at a weekend.
Oh no. So we need to find the wood firstly,
Find the wood to
And then-
reproduce the sales.
get the expertise to get the people back, to get them back up. And they had to come down 2 years ago. We've been fundraising ever since.
And how much does it cost? What are you aiming to get?
So a couple of years ago we were told it's going to cost around £40,000.
£40,000.
It's not a small
That's
amount.
not a small amount, no.
It's not.
So how do you go about raising? I mean, obviously you open the doors and people come in.
So we do activities here for children of all ages, adults, you name it. They all come and they do certain activities.
Do you have any idea when you might have enough?
So we work with Hampshire County Council and they're putting a schedule together to hopefully get them up soon. There isn't an end date
Right.
just yet.
Because we've got, Julia and I have been lucky enough to have access to a field with one of our viewers, Ian McKagan, haven't we?
Yes, bless him.
And we're going to try and grow some heritage wheat. And it struck us, here's a golden opportunity. If you could get your sales up,
And if
And
the
we get
stars
the
could just
fun.
align, you
yeah.
can have everything sorted.
we'll plant
Have
some
a
heritage
functioning windmill.
wheat in the winter, harvest it hopefully next year, enough to grind to flour to make bread. And if we could bring the flour back here, that would, I mean,
Grain, sorry.
the grain, sorry, Ian, the grain to be turned into flour,
Oh yeah,
and then we go away and bake it, and then we can come back.
Come back and share a loaf with
Yeah,
I'd be very grateful.
wouldn't
Break
that be
bread.
amazing? I have thoroughly enjoyed that investigation, Julia.
Myself included, yes, I loved it.
What a beautiful windmill. Definitely worth coming and exploring. So accessible from the A27. The opening times are Sundays, and I don't know if actually weekends or just Sundays. We'll put links to the Facebook page and the website.
March till October, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then there's a Christmas fair a week before Christmas.
And they do things for kids as well. They have kids fun days and all of that. So do check it out. Lots of things going on. They're very busy with stuff.
It's an absolutely wonderful setup here. You've got to come and explore it for yourselves, really must.
And make a donation, because they're desperate to get the sales on. We're desperate for them to get sales on because we're going to grow some heritage wheat.
In Hampshire.
And hopefully bring it back and grind it here.
Hampshire.
That would be fantastic. Big thanks to
Jane and Gary.
Jane and Gary. Thank you so much for letting us in. That's it from us. Until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.